Hi, I'm Kira Carey, and welcome to Cloudsmith's monthly webinar on all things supply chain security and package management. Cloudsmith is your only cloud-native universal artifact management platform. We support all your packages, and we have lots of features around supply chain security. So today we're going to be talking about a real-world zero-day supply chain attack and the response to the attack. So we're really lucky to be joined by David Gonzalez, who will walk us through the supply chain attack on a really popular Node package called Event Stream. So David is a principal engineer at Cloudsmith. He's the author of many books, including Developing Microservices with Node.js. He's a Google developer expert, a part-time lecturer, and he's also a member of the Node.js security working group. And this is where he's experienced a lot of vulnerabilities and how to get them converted to a CV and get the wider community updating. So let's bring him on.
Hi, hello.
Hey, we're so delighted to have you. And David is a new hire for Cloudsmith, so we're really happy to have him on the team.
Yeah, me too. I'm very happy to be here, to be honest. Thank you very much.
We're going to be talking about something they experienced on your Node.js security working group. Maybe first we could talk about what you do on that group. What's the aim of the group?
Yeah, spoiler alert, I haven't been very active in the last couple of years because, kids, COVID, and life happens. But usually it's like the process hasn't changed. Like basically what happens is somebody reports a vulnerability in HackerRank. HackerRank is a third-party website where they just manage security programs for companies. HackerRank, HackerOne actually, not HackerRank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that landed into our inbox, the team on the security working group in Node.js. And then we will triage the vulnerabilities. So that means verify the vulnerability, like assign a CVSS score, like how serious this vulnerability is, and things like that. And then contact the package maintainer from the report up to the point that the package maintainer either fixes or don't want to fix the vulnerability. That information is private, so you can't or you shouldn't even talk about that report because it's a security issue. Somebody else using the package. And then usually the normal route for that is the maintainer gets contacted. They acknowledge the vulnerability and publish a patch for it. And then after that, you just request a CVE. So create a CVE for that package for the given versions. Create the report and then publish it after it's fixed. So the recommendation is upgrade to the new version or versions depending on the package, and you are done. So we go from somebody noticing something into requesting the CVE and publishing the report on how to reproduce it and what's the effect of that vulnerability.
Cool. And we're talking today about a 0-day vulnerability. Are all vulnerabilities 0-day until they get a CVE score?
No. The 0-day term to me has always been confusing. 0-day to me seems like something which is like almost a nuclear explosion in the security chain. But like in reality, most of the 0 days might not be even impactful in many systems because like the network topology or the way they're using the library, it's something that has the potential to cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm in a system. So like in particular, like I handle a couple of those. And one of them was you could get a shell straight away to execute commands via the HTTP
Bang, you're in
interface.
there.
Yeah, so that's bad. That's pretty bad. But if you are in an enclosed ecosystem, like you are working in a private net that doesn't have access to the internet, it's not that bad. I mean, it's terrible, but it's not gonna destroy your company. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so let's focus in on this particular supply chain attack.
Yeah.
It's Event Stream, and can you walk us through how you found out about it
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so what happened is somebody raised a ticket or an issue in GitHub saying, I found something in uh, event stream. Well, it wasn't really in event stream. I think it was in flat map stream, which is a dependency of event stream.
Yeah.
So that's why. And then everybody started commenting. That thing that they found is malicious code that was trying to steal crypto wallets from the user's machine. And like if the wallet was unlocked and you execute that package or functions of this package, it will go there and read your wallet, the private keys and things like that, and send them, if I recall correctly, to a server or something like that. So we saw the GitHub incident, like the GitHub issue, and we started looking into it because that's a fairly serious situation.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're
npm
like
actually,
talking like straight away. This guy was like getting money basically straight
yeah,
from this dependency. Yeah.
yeah, and not only getting money, like we didn't know the extent of that code, that malicious code. Would that be just getting money out of crypto wallets? Could that be stealing passwords, stealing, like files from, like encrypting computers and then demanding a ransomware, a like a payment to encrypt the computers? So we started looking into it, and then we saw that what happened pretty much was the flat map stream package was handed over to somebody else because the maintainer won't have time to maintain it anymore. And that new person actually published a new version, which apparently was harmless, fixing a couple of bugs, but it contained that code, like it was cheeky. So if you look at GitHub, like the link you had in GitHub in npm,
Mm.
like the code wasn't matching the npm package. And then basically, like you will click on npm, go into GitHub, see the code will be like completely
Oh.
different, and then the package you download will be um, the malicious code.
So even if you were really vigilant and you were like, oh, there's a new version, I'm gonna check do a
That's
check, you wouldn't see this.
that's how they get you. Yes.
They're so cheeky.
Yeah. Yeah, and that raises an interesting question. Is like the work I did, and I probably will get back to in the security working group. It's not something I'm getting paid for. It's not something I'm getting anything other than professional realization and enjoyment out of it.
Mm.
And it's hard. Like I mean, it's really hard. So like you can build a tower, but pretty much that tower is resting in a very narrow surface, which is people willing to do work for free and without any like kind of like reward other than professional recognition and things like that. And it's dangerous. I believe the third party ecosystem now is managed by Sneak, but like it's not the only leg of the security ecosystem that is dangling around. So yeah, it's an interesting one because what happened then is like HackerOne report was raised, and then we immediately managed that. We gave the maximum CVSS score because it was like doesn't matter what you do, you will always be affected. And then we issued the CVE straight away. Now, the time from where that is discovered to the time where the CVE is issued, it's a very dangerous time because your
Yeah.
security scanner will come back to you telling you, you're fine, you have no
Yeah.
issues.
Because it's not a known vulnerability. So
Exactly, yes. So
and
there's
it's
no,
like you might also a lot of the time you're told to update as soon as possible. And that is, and so if you will bring in that update
yep.
and actually bring in that 0-day vulnerability
Well,
to your system.
if you ask me, and I always give the same advice, is your version should be locked to the patch version. So you have X.Y.Z, you will log to X.Y, but then leave the point set in the version to just upgrade as the new versions are released. So that means anybody who would have followed my advice would be affected by that because it was a minor, like it was a patch version. And I still think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Just
I've been looking a lot about this. Like, are you meant to like pin? Is it more important to pin or to update to latest? And I think it's,
yeah,
yeah,
at,
update
at
to
minimum,
latest seems to be what they're saying.
yeah. Updating to the latest version is always recommended, but sometimes you just can't because you are stretched or you just can't make a big change to the application right now. So that's why I suggest pin to the minor version and then leave the patch version. Uh, so it's major, minor, and then patch. So pin to the minor version and then leave the
Okay.
patch version to evolve with the library because that's going to fix bugs and security incidents, security vulnerabilities. They should all be fixed in patch versions. You should never, unless there is a good reason to fix a vulnerability in a minor or major version, you should always have patch versions for all your versions that are affected by this. So let's imagine that you have library XYZ version 4.0
Hmm.
and 5.0. and a vulnerability is discovered, you will need to create a version 4.1 and 5. Sorry, 4.0.1, 5.0.1 to fix the problem in the two versions. So it's tricky because if you follow the best practices, you will be affected by this one and by the next one's coming, which is not going to be the last one. So yeah.
Yeah. But so can you tell us um what were the initial, I suppose the initial signs were that you got a some actually found it.
Yeah.
So and then afterwards it's detected, you decided what was the score to give this vulnerability. What score did you give it? I think it's a big one.
It's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So like that, there's a calculator called the CBSS score calculator. Somewhere in a URL. Like if you Google for CBSS P2 calculator, it will be straight away there. And you can specify all the vectors of the system and
Yeah.
it will give you back a score. So this one in particular, it's like, you don't need to do anything, just install the package. And as you run your system, you are immediately compromised. So yeah, it's an interesting one because there's very little you can do other than using a different version. Now, there's a good point here. Like NPM took the package down very quickly, but how many enterprises who cache dependencies still nowadays, 3 years, 4 years later, have a copy of that
Yeah,
version?
it's like these vulnerabilities have really long tail.
Yeah,
I saw something about like Heartbleed, which is like from 10 years ago or
the
something.
TLS, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's some bug in OpenSSL, and it
Mm.
was there was a report from like say 6 years later, 6 years after it was patched now, and it was still an attack vector for attackers to get
Yeah,
into your system. So it's not just about discovering the vulnerability; it's about making sure that you're patching and you have a good process for finding these vulnerabilities.
yeah, exactly. I can give you another one, Log4j in Java. There
Oh
was a serious vulnerability in Log4j like 2 or 3 years ago. And I can tell you, I was talking last week to a friend who works on embed, and he was telling me it's like the only possible way I have to fix that vulnerability in my system is to replace all the hardware because the library comes in a memory which is read only. So I can't possibly upgrade the system without updating everything.
oh
So
god, yeah.
yeah,
That that's a bit, apparently it's on Mars as well.
yeah,
The Mars rover lander thing has it, so it's like, it's a intergalactic problem. So so you've discovered the vulnerability, you verified it, you've created a CVE for it. So now if your people's vulnerability databases should be updated, and how do the wider community know that they need to patch it? Is that they have to be monitoring the database, or was there some sort of communication outside of that?
it's just how you manage your software supply chain. My advice is always scan for your dependencies
Yeah.
because like vulnerabilities in your dependencies. The last thing you want is not knowing what's going on because you can't really make any decision. You might decide that this vulnerability does not affect me, so I'm going to release into production anyway.
Okay.
But you make an informed decision on this is a risk. I know about it. I have
Mm.
threat modeled my system, and this risk is actually very low on my context. But if you don't know what's going on in your dependencies, you are actually taking a big risk. So my advice is always scan for vulnerabilities, all your dependencies and transitive dependencies, and then after that, make a decision. I heard through the years things like you should always fix, medium plus vulnerabilities, and you should do any release with any medium plus CBSS scores vulnerabilities. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think yes, medium plus should be fixed if possible, but sometimes you are okay to live with critical vulnerabilities that don't affect you. So I can give you one example. One package that has 2 or 3 features. There's one critical vulnerability in one of the features, and you are not using it. Doesn't affect you.
Yeah,
So
actually, this is there's a new for I know. Have you heard about software bill of materials?
yeah,
It's like an ingredient list. So it might say, "Oh, you're vulnerable," but there's another format called VEX,
yeah,
which is meant to like tell people, yes, I have this package, but I'm not vulnerable, and you should give a reason for why you're not vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're kind of working on workflows for these to work together, but it's hard. It's very,
Yeah, it's almost like the best way I found to model that. It's an allow list and a block list. So you allow certain vulnerabilities to go and flow through the system, whereas some others is like, nope, this is an immediate nope. So yeah, that's the best way I have to. And to do that, you need the software bill of materials of your applications. I am following a project for a few years called Grapheas, which was started by Google, which exactly does that. You can add materials to your software, and you
Mhm.
have a kind of a metadata collection of your software. But I still haven't seen it working 100%. So
Yeah, I want to see a lot more workflows around that, like kind
yeah,
of with your CI/CD, like automation. Like I don't want to be doing. I suppose you do have to, if you're
yeah,
with Vex, you still have to like. I can't see the automation where it says like I'm not vulnerable. That's the wouldn't
yeah.
that be great? We'd be all sucking diesel if that
It
was
also is interesting because you scan today, the scan comes back saying you are not vulnerable, and then tomorrow there's a new vulnerability in one of your packages. How do you know about it? The only possible way is to rescan all your
yeah.
repositories. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
have to like continuously scan even if you're feature complete and all done on your product, you probably still need to be scanning that if
yeah,
people are using it out in the wild.
yep,
So, and do
correct.
you think that NPM ecosystem, because it seems like some ecosystems have more of these type of vulnerabilities, like package related ones, like
Yeah,
maintainer hijack, typo squatting, dependency confusion. It seems like NPM, maybe Ruby, maybe PyPy, Python are
yeah.
more susceptible to that. Do you think it's just because um, there's so many the community is more used to consuming them from public repositories, more used to small packages being brought into software, or is there something fundamentally about these systems that are that
Well, I can give you one reason for that, which is it's just my opinion. So like anybody, disregard that.
yeah,
But I come from a Java background, and
yeah,
when I was in Java, I would install Spring, I would install Hibernate, and that's pretty much everything I needed. And then those libraries will come from a reputed, like somebody who knows what they're doing.
yeah, like a
It's
kind of someone that's like Red Hat or where there's a community making a
yeah,
curated list of
yeah,
libraries for you to use.
and it has a lot of exposure. Like all the dependencies are concentrated there. Like then Waba from Google started showing up, and that's fine. You started using Waba, but the reality is you had a list of dependencies, but they all came from the Apache Foundation, from Spring, from others. And yes, there were vulnerabilities, but there was pretty much no events like somebody abandoning a package. Like, I mean, about 2 3 years ago, I was working in a project, and I just looked into the dependency tree of a Node.js application, and there was one critical vulnerability of one of the packages. And then I just went to GitHub, and that guy, the last time he updated the library was like 6 years ago. And somebody in an issue was saying, there are no new versions coming. And the guy came back to us saying, sorry, I just stopped programming. I am doing something else. So I'm not going to do that. And I don't want to give access to anybody to maintain the library. So it's the full system which companies spend millions on securing, depending on a small library, which somebody is maintaining or not.
Yeah.
That's very common in Node.js. I don't see that happening in Java. I think the community in Node.js is amazing, but I also think that the exposure you get by installing dependencies on npm, it's almost like, well, it's almost no, it's exactly taking someone's code which hasn't been vetted, nobody has enforced any quality on it, and pasting it in your system. I a few years back I read a comment which is something like only 17% of the code that you run in your production servers is written by you. I would be willing to say that anybody using Fastify, Express, or similar, if you go above 5%, you will be doing well.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah,
risk there.
I think I don't see that changing. I don't think I
No,
know these supply chain attacks are coming to light and people are kind of getting a grip to them, but I don't see us saying, "Oh no, I'm going to rewrite Kubernetes because
No.
Yeah, it's too hard, and you gain so much from using open source. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
positive,
yeah.
but there needs to be probably more checks on and on how to maintain, how to reduce your vulnerabilities and know what you're using as well. And a big thing is like I don't even know what I'm using.
It's the 80-20% rule. You heard about that, right? So 80% of the features will take you 20% of the time. The other 20% of the features will take 80% of your time. It's
Yeah,
the same in security. So you can do only so much to protect yourself from vulnerabilities, and that's going to take you 20%. The other 80% will be going the last 200 meters, which actually are going to be pretty much impossible to breach for the gap for. So my advice is always, yes, you have to protect against vulnerabilities, but you need to be able to react when something happens. And that's the
yes,
other 80% that can be done very quickly. So one angle of this is, yes, scan for dependencies. Yes, make sure you have the software bill of materials, or at least know what you are running in production. But if tomorrow there is a zero day, you need to be prepared to even shut down the system if necessary. I mean, I've worked in systems where they decided to shut down the application when something like that happened, because the damage that could have been done to the app or to the company was way bigger than shutting it down for 3 4 hours, fix it, and then bring it back again. It's an option. So
yeah. And I'm actually I'm looking into this framework called S2C2F. It's like a framework for consuming open source securely, and a lot of that is like know where your open source is coming from, keep an inventory like an SBOM, use an artifact repository, and also incident response, which I think you're alluding to there, where like what you
yeah,
do when something does happen and how do you make sure that you quickly update your vulnerabilities.
yeah,
So I think like it's all the stuff that you're saying there.
yeah. I mean, I would like to do an exercise at some point, which is, any of the Node.js applications that I work with and the open source projects I worked on, see how many contributors are in my dependencies. I can tell you that at least 40 to 50 on average at the minimum. Like it's just crazy. Like, I mean, if you go to any chief security officer in a company and tell, can I take code from this random guy on the street and put it in my system? The answer will be no. But if you do npm install, it's fine. It's
And I know they're actually working on this Providence. Have
yeah,
you heard anything about that? It's
no,
like how you can inject um, information about how this package was built and who built it. And I think that would improve some things. Like maybe that
yeah.
would help against this particular type of attack on event stream because
What Yeah, one thing I suggested a few years ago is having a flag in Node.js to sign packages, like only accept signed packages. And if there is any signature change, you just raise an alarm saying, hey, I'm not going to run this because this package was maintained by Matteo Colina and now it's maintained by David Gonzalez. And I don't trust this guy. Or I might
yeah,
trust him, but I don't know if I trust him or not. So you
yeah,
just bail and then see what's going on. But that's not obvious to implement and requires people to collaborate. And 90% of people on npm will be like, I'm just some student in college. Well, not 90, but a good number. Like, I'm just a student in college, which I thought this was going to be useful for somebody else. I just publish it. I'm not going to look at it ever again.
yeah,
I created a library a few years back called Levenstein map. The only thing that does is you can create a hash map, and then you can get keys by an approximate string. So if I misspell my name, I will still get my key. And like about 6 months ago, I got an email from somebody saying, can you add this functionality? And I was like, somebody using this? So that's
yeah.
the
It's
level.
like
Yeah.
I suppose it's abandoned software is a big. I think a huge amount of packages have
Yeah.
one or no maintainers. I think that most packages have no maintainers really, where like there's been no activity for over a year and nobody is updating those vulnerabilities.
Yeah. And there's one even worse, like packages which look maintained, seem maintained, and they have maintainers, and you approach them with a vulnerability and they tell you this is not a vulnerability, I'm not going to fix it. And then
What
you are like, well,
what
I'm
do
going
you
to issue.
do? What do you
Well,
do when
I issue a CVE at my
okay.
discretion and then tell them, here's the CVE. It's up to you not to fix it, but this is flagged as a vulnerability. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it rarely happens, but I've seen it happening with very popular libraries in npm. So
And I suppose, maintainers are people and this is not their day job. So there's
yeah,
lots of reasons why they don't want to update it. They might personally think that it wasn't a vulnerability because they don't think it should be used that way, or but
yeah,
you know, I as well, this framework that I'm looking at, it's like at the highest level, level 4 of S2 C2F. It actually recommends, if you see a vulnerability, to have the ability to like fork the code and then fix it, and with the hope of it being merged at a later stage. So it's like a temporary fix, and that
yeah.
like the highest level at the moment.
I've done that a couple of times. Never ends up well.
No, no, it's hard maintaining two different things. It means that you're on different paths.
Yeah.
And it's not great. So is there any way to find this type of attack? The maintainer is a legitimate maintainer according to us, but I suppose what you were saying is you could have a score attached to this new maintainer to say they're not as trustworthy as it was before, and you have to make a decision on that. I suppose that would help.
Not at the moment, to be honest. I mean, there's not any mechanism to enforce that I'm aware. There's not any mechanism that is going to give you a number of, like, humans are unidimensional. Like, people don't want to see complicated matrices. They want to see a number. Like,
Yeah.
this person is a 10 out of 10. I trust that person. But even then, like, I mean, simple things like somebody who is very trustable, and then that person adds somebody else as a maintainer because that person is collaborating to the library, and like they just add it as a maintainer to give a
Yeah.
hand, and then you gain the trust of the original maintainer, and then you can publish whatever you want. So even if the package is in my name and you trust me, I might have given access to somebody else to publish new versions without me looking into it. So can't
Yeah. And
prevent
even
that.
like maintainers that were, good maintainers for a very long time can make decisions that would affect people using it, like the colors and fakers, that package,
Yeah,
where I think they our left pad is when they removed it, right?
yeah,
And so so
that's an
people
interesting one.
broke the
Yeah.
internet.
So that's not a vulnerability as such, but somebody removed, I think it was left pad, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And that caused about 95% of all the applications in Node.js in the world to fail. Because in any way or another, everybody's using left pad. So is that not worse than having a vulnerability? Because if you can't build your application, you're actually screwed because you basically need to be able to release at any time. What happens if suddenly there is a new vulnerability, or it's a coordinated thing? Like I remove left pad and then somebody else discloses a vulnerability on another package, which depends on left pad. It's a disaster. Like it's an
Yeah.
absolute disaster. So
So all these things are where a maintainer, they legitimately did something. Now, obviously, with
yeah,
Event Stream or with Flatpak, it was malware, but with these other packages, they were allowed to do it, and being able to discover those things. I suppose the best you can do, the most, is to update as soon as you get that vulnerability in.
yep, yep. And like you will get hit by things like flat map stream if you update and keep up to date. But the alternative is not doing it, and you get hit by everything else. So you just choose
You
which
choose
one's
your
worse.
battles, yeah.
Yeah.
And have
So,
an incident response plan so you know that this could happen and we know how to fix it.
well, my initial reaction to it is make sure that can be fixed. Like if it cannot be fixed, consider what's the worst thing that could happen to my system if somebody uses that. Like in this particular case, I will even fork the code and fix it. It was easy, just remove a couple of lines and that's it. But in other cases, it's just, assess what's the potential blast radius and what will happen. And after that, it's like, it's just a matter of managing the information in your system. Security is always a problem of people accessing things that shouldn't be accessing. That's it. Like, I mean, it's as simple as that. Like somebody accessing my Bitcoin wallet, which I don't have any, but anyway, it's a problem. Somebody accessing my command terminal, it's a problem. So it always is somebody accessing information that shouldn't be accessed by that person. So how do you stop that is the first question you need to ask. And then what's the way to respond to that? It's another one. More concern, I am more concerned about the response time rather than the response itself, because there's always a workaround. Like, can be as simple as a patch version of the library, or can be as complicated as, like rolling back to a previous version. But the concern is companies that are releasing once every 6 months or once a quarter, that has a multi-day, multi-week release process. That's a big problem because they are utterly exposed.
Brilliant. And so I think we'll end it there. So do you have any more thoughts on the future of supply chain security?
No, scan your dependencies. Make sure that you can react in your system in less than a day, and be vigilant. That's the only three things that you can really do. Other than that, keep doing.
Yeah. Oh, well, and thanks for watching. This is Cloudsmith's monthly webinar, and we'll see you again next month.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks, David. Bye.